Hello, everybody. My name is David Townsend. I'm a professor here at the University of Maine and president of the University of Maine Faculty Senate. Welcome. Today is one of a series of town hall forums that President Ferrini-Mundy and others have done. I trust that most of you are growing quite accustomed to looking at these screens with small faces on them for some time now. So it shouldn't be too hard for you to sit through another hour of this where we should have some interesting discussions. This is the second open forum or town hall that President Ferrini-Mundy has run since we have had the COVID-19 crisis. This is the first one, though, that has to be done online. The first one was live. So today we have a list of questions that have already been sent to us. There will be opportunities for those of you out there to ask questions. I'm sure you have many. And so at this point, I want to introduce the president of the University of Maine, President Joan Ferrini-Mundy.
Thank you, Dave. Hi, everybody. This medium is difficult to gauge because I can't hear you say hello back, but I know people are out there. Welcome and thank you for participating in this very new way of communicating. And as Dave says, a way that we're all getting to be better and better at every day, I guess. For those who aren't in Orono, it's starting to snow. So I just thought I'd give a little weather report here. I want to welcome everyone to this discussion. We have a plan for doing this, and in a minute I'll turn to my colleagues and ask them to introduce themselves. But I ask you to bear with us because this is a new mode and we're going to try to be as responsive as we can to your questions. I'd like to also share just a little bit of news and offer a few thoughts at this time as we begin. First of all, I hope you are all well. I know that this horrible pandemic is affecting everyone in one way or another, and we think about you, miss you here on campus, and hope that that your lives are okay right now. The campus is very quiet, but there's an enormous amount of activity. It's just not visible in the same ways. And one thing I've noted, and I want to thank everyone who's listening for this, is that all of our faculty, our staff, our students, everyone associated with the university is doing work in new ways now, or engaging in new ways. And I think the ways in which we've been able to be nimble and responsive are just phenomenal. And the number of examples that I could list right now of people working very hard to serve our students well, to make sure that everyone is healthy and safe, to do our best to protect our campus in terms of its facilities and the things that we need to do to keep going and to help the state. Very, very long list. I urge you to take a look at the UMaine website at the coronavirus section, because you will see all of those examples laid out in great detail. A few major points that I do want to make and that I think are probably familiar, but our faculty and staff managed to move our entire instructional operation at both the UMaine campus and the UMaine at Machias campus to an online and remote operation in just a little over 2 weeks with wonderful, wonderful responsiveness. Putting students first, putting the need to be caring and flexible for our students first. And we need to hear from you about how that's going for you students. We will be sending a survey out, I believe, tomorrow. And I know that deans and associate deans and department heads and your faculty are checking on you as well. But we realize this is a major shift for everyone, and we appreciate the great flexibility. And we hope that learning is still happening in whatever circumstances you find yourselves. And we want to be helpful in that. We've made a number of specific policy adjustments to help our students make it through this semester successfully. We've moved to some much more flexibility with the pass-fail options. We've extended the period for course withdrawal and many, many other ways in which the faculty are working to help support what students are doing. So thank you to everyone for that. We have new ways of working with student support services. The student life operation has also been extremely responsive and nimble and is hearing from students, and that's another place for you to go if you need help and you need advice. Many, many folks here are standing ready and are very engaged in doing that kind of work as we speak. Admissions and enrollment management are going strong and working hard to find very new ways to reach our prospective incoming students and their families with virtual tours and a lot of direct contact from departments and the colleges to be sure that your questions are answered and that you consider the University of Maine and the University of Maine at Machias as terrific places to begin your next phase of education in higher education. And we're here for you and want you to consider us and think about joining us. So thank you for that too. We've been very, very responsive to the state, and we can all be so proud of our land grant, sea grant, space grant university. I just saw a Bangor Daily News flash come across my screen that said half of the astronauts in space right now are from Maine, which is very cool. So best to them. In addition to many things that you've heard about, though, there will be more to come. We have folks on our campuses who are doing everything from assisting with creating mapping applications for the state to use, to providing hospital-grade hand sanitizer through our R&D labs, to working on protective equipment, on a variety of protocols for other kinds of equipment. Our scientists and engineers, healthcare professionals, innovators have turned their energies toward being supportive of the state of Maine and being of help in facing this challenging crisis. So it's a very different time than any of us expected to be in right now in the middle of April, but at the same time, University of Maine at Machias, keep on going. We have so much happening right now. It's really humbling to watch all of our colleagues and all of our students cope with this at this time. So I'd next like to turn to my colleagues who are here on the phone with me. There are several who are here, and we hope that they'll be able to be engaged in some of the answering of questions, but I'd like them to introduce themselves. And so next we will turn to Faye Gilbert.
Faye Gilbert, Interim Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost. So glad to be talking with y'all. Glad you're here.
And Dan.
I'm Daniel Qualls. I'm the interim head of campus at the University of Maine at Machias, and glad to talk with you guys.
Robert.
Hi, folks. I'm Robert Dana. I'm the Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students. It's good to be with you, if not being able to see you.
Cody.
Good afternoon. I'm Cody Vararamian, Vice President for Research and Dean of the Graduate School.
Chris.
Good afternoon. Chris Lundstrom. I'm Vice President of Human Resources.
Hello, everyone. This is Claire Strickland, Chief Business Officer for the University of Maine and the University of Maine at Machias.
Fred.
Hello, everyone. I'm Fred Cervello. I'm the Dean of the College of Natural Sciences, Forestry, and Agriculture, and glad to participate today.
Good afternoon. I'm Kimberly Whitehead, Chief of Staff to the President and Commencement Coordinator. Happy to be with you today.
Well, thank you, everybody. We've set this up in a way that, in part, we'll work with some questions that have already come in, and thank you for those questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. We know that for some, we'll need to send more detailed answers out to individuals and also to add to the FAQ list that's just growing by the day. So keep an eye on that as well. But I'll turn to Dave, who will start us off in managing to organize some of these questions. David.
Well, thank you, Joan. Well, here we are heading into the last 3.5 or just over 3 weeks left in the semester, and students and faculty are beginning to think about summer school in the fall. We did hear already this week from the University of Maine system that all summer classes here will be offered online exclusively, at least through July. And so the questions are arising. Do we expect to have classes in person in the fall? At some point, of course, we will be reassembling, returning to campus, and students and faculty are starting to think about that. And how might we be thinking in terms of how best to prepare for when we do return to classes and work in the fall?
So thanks for those questions. And I think that's a kind of a nice synopsis of several questions that we've had come in. So first, let's talk about summer. And let me step back a bit to say that the University of Maine system, Chancellor Malloy, his team, the presidents of all of our universities in the system have been working extremely collaboratively, daily conversations about how to make announcements, what kinds of changes to make, how we'll move forward. And so we are very much a part of that team, and I want to make that clear. So for all of us across the system, and at UMaine and UMaine at Machias, as well as Dave says, courses that begin in May, June, or July will all be offered remotely or online. And so people will be needing to make that transition and preparing for that activity. To the bigger question, the question of when do we come back? I just want to be clear about a couple of things. First of all, the University of Maine is in operation. We are moving forward. We are offering education. We're doing research. We're doing public service under the current circumstances, and we're ready to face whatever the circumstances will be as they unfold and evolve over the coming weeks and months. I also want to harken back to what the governor said just yesterday, I believe, or the day before in her press conference, which is in response to the same kind of question, that our focus right now in the state of Maine and nationally and in the world is to defeat this virus. And so that's where our emphasis is. It is on staying at home and staying healthy. We can't make a prediction about exactly when things will change and how they will change and how we will address that. But I just have to say that the nimbleness and responsiveness that we've shown as a campus in just the last month is a really good indicator that we'll be able to figure this out together as we go forward. Keep watching the news, keep watching what comes from the governor. We will be absolutely following Maine CDC guidance and national CDC level guidance. We're all looking ahead toward the next class coming here to the University of Maine and being ready to educate them in the high quality ways and the affordable ways that we do now. And we'll just figure out what that looks like as time passes.
Thank you, Joan. Keeping with the topic of online classes, it's a new experience for a lot of faculty. It's a new experience for a lot of students. And those of us who are in regular contact with students, especially at this time where they're registering for fall semester classes, we're hearing that the workload since the transition to online has increased dramatically for these students, that they find themselves having more assigned classroom work, written assignments to be turned in, et cetera. Do you have any advice for how students and faculty should be viewing these last few weeks of classes in that sense?
So I'll chime in, but I will turn to Interim Provost Gilbert to add more on this. I think all of us who are in these back-to-back Zoom meetings all day now, every day, might be willing to admit that there is a lot of intensity to this mode of communication. It feels like work, a lot of work. And I know everybody's willing to work very hard, but I do think it's critical to be mindful of the following. You're teaching a course, you have key objectives, you have key learnings that you're hoping your students achieve over the rest of the time, the just a little over 3 weeks left in the course schedule for the semester. So I would urge faculty to focus there, focus on what's most important, be mindful of the many sort of unknown stresses that our students do face right now. And I know that our students are strong and wonderful, but be flexible. Think about ways that these students can demonstrate their knowledge to you that may not be exactly the same traditional ways that you've always used. And I am hearing a lot about this. It feels like a lot of extra work. So it's something to pay attention to and to be mindful of. Faye, can you add to that?
I agree with everything you just said, President. And I believe perhaps that the faculty, in wanting to be sure in an online environment or a remote environment that students were working with the material in phases as opposed to all at once, they added a lot of assignments, which is fine. It's a good idea. It's a good way to supplement what you're doing, unless that happened across 5 different classes that the students are trying to take. So that awareness of the student voice goes with the request of trying to keep workload reasonable by focusing on the key objectives to be completed for the term, as students' lives have also undergone a huge shift, as have ours. So I believe everybody's intentions are great. The impact, though, we hear the student voice of saying the workload has gone up as faculty have assigned more assignments to give them a greater opportunity to work with the material.
While Faye has the floor or the screen or however we now talk about this, I'd like to point a couple of additional questions in her direction. There is a question about how to find out about pass-fail as an option I think we just need to clarify that and also to give the dates and the time frame for that. And also, there was a question about extending the time for which grades may be completed and turned in. And I think safer for the provost to give those answers so that we're clear and accurate.
So the pass-fail, it's part of the FAQs. You should also find information about pass-fail from your associate dean or your advisor. The period is open now for students to be able to select courses for which they want to complete a pass-fail, but we are encouraging students to talk with advisors, their faculty, associate deans about options. And you had a three-part question that I may not be able to remember all at one time. The extension for grades, we're hoping that grades to be turned in by faculty are not extended too much because a lot depends on commencement depends on that, as well as internships or other jobs and positions. So May 15th is the date that comes to mind as an absolute last date. I hope Jeff St. John will correct me from somewhere if that's in error. So to try to get your grades in a timely manner with everybody understanding and being compassionate that we're in a special time and place.
You know, the provost mentioned commencement, so I'm going to turn to Dr. Whitehead to speak to that. I assume people have seen the two major announcements about commencement. One is that system-wide, we have been very clear that it will not be possible to have face-to-face commencements on the standard time frame. Different universities are arranging very different ways of celebrating our graduating seniors. I have heard from many of our seniors who rightly want to be sure that their accomplishments are celebrated, that their families and friends have the chance to recognize them. We've also made the announcement that when it is possible, we will arrange for a face-to-face event that honors them. But Kimberly, if you can tell us more, please, about this.
Sure. So thanks for asking about commencement. We're really excited to celebrate the achievements of our class of 2020 graduating students. The commencement, as the president commencement committee, is simultaneously planning for a class of 2020 student recognition week and an in-person commencement ceremony. So just a little bit about our student recognition week. It's scheduled for May 4th through 9th, 2020. And it will feature congratulatory messages from our president, from Dean Robert Dana, other campus administrators, as well as our student leaders. It will highlight information about our valedictorian and salutatorian and outstanding students. It will share profiles of our presidential awardees, as well as feature a video that displays the names of the graduating students that was captured on the scoreboard at the Alphonse Stadium. So we're really excited to be able to present that Student Recognition Week. In terms of planning for the in-person commencement, we continue to plan for our traditional commencement ceremony, and we look forward to a festive and commemorative occasion when health and safety guidance allows us to come together again. And so we are very interested in what you have to say about commencement. And so we have added a suggestion box to the commencement website. And if you have suggestions or ideas about commencement, we encourage you to visit the commencement website at umaine.edu/commencement. The suggestion box will be located to the left of the screen when you are able to access that website. Also, I just want to make a comment. There were some questions about the ability to purchase academic regalia. And so undergraduate and master students can purchase caps and gowns by visiting the University of Maine bookstore website. And that address is bookstore.umaine.edu. Doctoral students can arrange for regalia rentals through the bookstore as well. So I encourage you to visit our commencement website. It's been redesigned. It will feature information about commencement in terms of ordering your regalia, featuring our valedictorian and salutatorian. If you visit it right now, those two students are listed there and we congratulate them. So we are really excited about commencement and look forward to our Student Recognition Week.
Thank you, Kimberly. I'd like to turn to Dan Qualls, head of campus at the University of Maine at Machias, to hear a bit about commencement there and anything else you want to be sure that we mentioned to do with our students. So Dan, please.
We have a similar poll out, and students have until, I believe, April 10th, which is coming up. I believe it's tomorrow, to fill out the poll. And we've already gotten a lot of responses, and it's looking like it's very similar to the University of Maine, where we're going to postpone our face-to-face commencement, and in the meantime, we're looking at some options that'll be online. We're looking at a virtual yearbook and things like that.
So as you can see, what we're trying to do is stay fluid, to hear ideas, to be open to trying new things. Some of the new things we try, we may find we like very much and want to incorporate them into post-COVID-19 life, which brings me to a point that I wanted to make a bit earlier, and that is this. We will get through this very, very difficult time, but we'll be a different place. We'll have had different experiences. People will have done different work. People will have encountered different and new issues that were never anticipated. And so I think for the future, I'm encouraging people to begin to think about, where are we strong and will we want to be stronger as a university going forward? How do we think about what the most interesting and important educational options will be for our students? How do we think about more flexibilities to work with students in the post-COVID-19 era? And so we'll be soliciting ideas a lot from all of you who are listening, but even beyond, to say, let's think hard about what our land-grant university will be going forward as we navigate the next iterations. I'm going to turn to Dean Dana and also ask Dave Townsend. Dave, there are several faculty-related questions that have to do with tenure and things. I'm hoping maybe you could be taking a look at those. Well, we asked Dean Dana to say a bit more about how things are from his perspective relative to all of the great interactions we have with students.
Well, thank you. The wonderful thing is that our students are staying completely involved and engaged. They're doing all sorts of interesting things, from volunteering to leadership courses online. Many of them are engaging with the recreation center. Many of them are struggling with issues of what am I going to do next, looking for letters of recommendation, going to the Career Center, getting involved with campus activities, the Counseling Center, Student Accessibility Support Services. And they're doing it in large numbers. And I think the most important thing to remember is whatever you need, problems, little, small, just somebody to talk to, you can find that at Student Life, and you're finding it. So we're here for you. We're going to continue to be here for you. Life goes on for students. This is obviously a very different day and time, but in the lifetimes of students, you might think, well, this is just the natural course of things. It isn't, but I would recommend to everyone listening that we chronicle this in our mind, so that once we're finished with it and moved on to more normal times, that we haven't forgotten this, because there's so much to learn and grow from this.
As Dave gets ready, I'll just chime in with that. Check out the library's website. They are doing a wonderful project to create an archive and a documentation of this time, this historic moment for the university. And they want to hear from students. They want to hear from faculty and staff and alums and all of us. And I think that's going to be just a fascinating project as a way for us to keep track of what this is for all of us. Dave, you've seen these questions now. There are several that are kind of very faculty specific. And for those that you think we can answer, I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, there are several that have a common theme. Of course, this semester for many faculty will be what we're calling a lost semester or a lost year, really, especially for those faculty who are actively engaged in research, unable to conduct their research in their laboratories, to do field research, and so forth because of travel restrictions. And so those faculty who are on the tenure track, they're concerned, will their tenure clock be extended at all? Do you have any insights into that?
By the current contract, faculty can apply to extend their contract if there are extenuating circumstances. So they need to talk with their dean and look, but it is already incorporated in the process that they can request an extension, and particularly if this is disrupting research or research timelines, they would need to make the case.
There are also some questions from non-tenure track faculty and adjunct faculty quite concerned about the future they're facing in terms of continued employment through the summer and the fall. Can you give us any insights into that issue?
Maybe turn to Chris for this. All of the HR related questions are quite complex, I've come to understand, and we are working hard to be as flexible and supportive as we can. But let's hear from Chris, not just on this, but maybe a little more broadly on some of the HR matters.
Sure, just to build on relative to the tenure track faculty, with all other faculty, our normal processes are still in place for reappointments of individuals. So those processes haven't changed, and we're continuing to move forward with those. Be happy to address other questions as well.
Continuing with faculty concerns, many faculty are beginning to plan ahead, not just for the fall semester, but to get their scholarly activities back in step with what they hope will be happening in the fall. For instance, a number of professional conferences apparently are already being scheduled for the fall around the country, and yet we have a travel ban in place where we can't purchase airline tickets and the like. Will that be lifted in time for advanced purchases and planning for travel for these conferences, for instance, in September?
So again, I understand these questions and they're very real. At the same time, the guidance that we have right now is in place that we are not planning travel right now. We're not certainly purchasing tickets at this time. As soon as that guidance changes, we'll let people know. I think it's really important also to keep an eye on the national professional societies and their own plans, because I'm already starting to see in my own field variations, even for fall, as planning is shifting and new ways of thinking about how to engage are happening. And Dave, you've brought up something that's related to research. I'll just turn to Cody in a second, but to say that a reminder, we're a land-grant university. A major part of our mission is scholarly work and research and continuing to build new knowledge that's usable for the world and that's relevant, that deepens our understanding of the world around us. And for researchers here at the University of Maine and the University of Maine at Machias, they are in all different kinds of places with being able to continue that work. For those who do lab work, bench work, field work, the conditions right now are making that really quite difficult and restricted, although Cody will speak to that in a moment. At the same time, I'm hearing from researchers who've shifted their emphasis unexpectedly, but still shifting it to creating new proposals and doing work that they can do remotely and continuing to engage their graduate students in literature reviews and in writing and getting papers done and data analysis. So Cody, do you want to say a little bit about your take on the state of where we are with our research activity? Unmute, Cody.
Okay, I thought that on mute. Okay.
Still on mute, Cody.
Okay, is it working now? Okay. So I was saying that yesterday, actually, we had a message that was sent out to the entire university community from me or my office, providing an update in terms of what's going on with research and scholarly activity and how we can serve our university community, as well as since the previous time that we sent our message, what is our sort of a revised definition of essential research and doing research on campus and in field work versus away from campus or field, like in one's home. Also, in our message, we provided more clarification in terms of how to report any kind of research and scholarly work that is taking place at the university and what type of a process we have in place. And essentially, we are moving more towards like the approval process. So as notifications come in, we would look at them and have the academic units of those requesters also look at them, like at the dean's level or at the center director's level, and then the response is provided to them in terms of whether that research can be done or not. Now, having said that, I also want to be clear about it. The approval process really applies if people want to do research on campus or in field work. If somebody wants to do research from remote location, like from one's home, all we are asking is for a brief notification of us to kind of have a census of that, know what kind of work is going on across the board at the university. But other than notifying us for not on-campus research and not field research, they don't need sort of approval for that. And of course, that's always available. And actually, as President, you were mentioning a moment ago, this can provide us to kind of look at other ways that we can still move forward with our research. Perhaps if we have some extra time to write those proposals that sometimes before COVID-19 we didn't have enough time for it. The Office of Research Development is also available to assist our university community in respect to any aspects of proposal development. At the same time, Office of Research Administration, they are very much open for business, even though the staff are working remotely. And just this morning, I was talking with the director of that office, and the way the office is functioning, still we are receiving proposals, still proposals are getting submitted and awards are being received.
Great, thank you, Cody. I'm noticing a question here about students. Of course, the research of students, very important to our university. This question asks if there's a plan in place for those students who need to complete lab work, such as senior project work prior to graduation, both this semester and in the fall. In our daily conference calls with deans and others, what we are hearing is that deans, associate deans, faculty advisors of these students are really your first line for getting answers to those questions, so you should be in touch with them. We're hearing of many good solutions to supporting students to finish their honors theses on time, to defend their dissertations online, to be able to get this work completed, and your faculty stand ready. I think I can say this confidently, stand ready to help make that happen. So please seek that kind of help. I'm going to turn to some HR issues. We have a number of questions about staff concerned with the future of their positions, ways of using and sharing sick leave, questions about how on-site or remote work transitions over time, issues about layoffs and involuntary furloughs, which have been discussed not in that way. And so I just want to be clear that Chancellor Malloy issued a statement on April 3rd. If people haven't seen it, you can find it in your email from Chancellor Daniel Malloy. And it's very clear. He says, therefore, I want you to know that UMS will continue its commitment to our employees at least through June 30. No employee will face involuntary layoff or loss of the opportunity for some form of income replacement with regular benefits through that time due to COVID-19 disruptions. Now, there's a lot packed in that sentence. It's extremely complex. I'm going to turn to Chris to say a few things about how people can get additional detail and help on this matter, which is, I know, of great concern to so many, but I did want to be clear that the perspective of the system and the university is expressed well by the Chancellor. We are seeking to support our staff as much as we possibly can. So Chris, I think a little more about where people should go with their many very valid questions on this.
Sure. So first of all, I encourage folks to stay in direct communication with their supervisors, especially when you're working remote. It's a little more challenging, but do please stay in contact with them. And then for any other general questions, would encourage people to reach out to either folks in my department, in the campus HR department for both here and Machias, as well as the Employee Benefits Center that serves system-wide. Are ready and prepared to answer folks' questions. Not all the questions can be answered easily. To your point, President, some of the situations are quite complex, but we stand ready to assist individuals in that regard. And just building on, I know there were some questions around that some individuals are concerned that maybe we've had some layoffs or involuntary furloughs. And just want to be clear, we worked very much in hand with the collective bargaining units in part to figure out how to navigate these challenging times, and came up with the option of the voluntary layoffs. or voluntary furloughs, excuse me, which are different than a layoff. In a layoff, there'd be a break in service, there'd be a discontinuance of benefits. And so the benefit of the voluntary furlough is it allows people to continue those benefits, continue their benefits at their active employee premiums, and be in a position to return to full work when that work is available. Also want to just emphasize that there are really three main areas or three main aspects to pay continuation for individuals. As we've communicated, the Families First Coronavirus Recovery Act, FFCRA, provides some federally legislated benefits that are on top of the benefits that UMS currently provides to employees, and provides some access to some additional paid time off, depending on that person's circumstance. Also, people have access to whether they have sick leave, they have vacation, they have, in some cases, compensatory time that's been accumulated that they can use. And then again, the voluntary furlough. And so, as I mentioned, if people are trying to navigate what makes sense for them, what's right in their situation, encourage them to reach out to folks in my department, and again, stay in communication with their supervisor. If you go to the UMaine portal homepage, you'll see across the top in the banner is a link to Human Resources. And if you click that link, that landing page has access or provides access to much of the information, much of the forms and material that people might want to reference to help understand what options are available to them.
Thank you, Chris. There's a follow-up question that's for Cody. I think I'll attempt to answer it, and if I get it badly wrong, Cody will correct me, I'm sure. But it's about the email you sent yesterday, Cody, about submitting approval for off-campus but in-state field work, and whether that's required for plans that would be launching after May 17th, or if we're only supposed to submit plans through May 17th. I glanced at the form and the materials. My advice would be to go ahead and submit your summer plans as they are, with clarity about the dates. And so if there are changes that we can notify you of, we know, rather than repeated submissions. I can see Cody nodding. I don't know if you all can, but it sounds like that's okay, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Dave, are we seeing some more faculty questions or information?
Yeah, we have a comment that was just sent in by Lisa Newman, who's the president of the University of Maine chapter of AFM. And it says, any faculty on the tenure track can now make a request to their chair or dean to stop the tenure clock due to COVID-19 disruptions. And this is a new agreement that has just been hammered out between AFM and the University of Maine system. And they may also choose later not to use this extra time if it turns out it's not necessary to have a productive and successful application.
That's great.
Terrific. There are a couple of questions that I'm just now noticing. How are current events affecting the changing budget models being currently considered? This is a great question, and I will start it and then turn to our CBO, Claire Strickland. You know, it's no surprise that this kind of an event, this kind of a circumstance is causing quite a disruption in how we think about our finances. For many reasons. There are lots of factors at play here. There is the need to continue to support our students, and the fact that we were able to refund room and board to students, for one thing. Federal legislation that's just happening and is just being interpreted. The guidance is still being developed so that we will come to understand over the coming days, we hope, more precisely what comes back to whom and how that can be deployed back out. We expect to see more federal legislation going forward as well around recovery kinds of stimulus and support actions. So it's quite a dynamic situation. Of course, the state as well faces a dynamic situation. For those who follow these details, we are near the end of fiscal 20, ends at the end of June. We will start fiscal year 21 in July. We are still working on making sure we can put our resources in the right place to complete fiscal 20, and we're very confident that that will happen. Planning now for 21, and of course 22 will follow. And I want to emphasize that as we plan and as we look ahead, We are facing challenging times, but we are a university with fantastic programs, with high quality, with great resources available for students, and we are working very hard to serve the students well, to be sure that we help you see options for retention and for coming here. So we've mobilized, or we're about to mobilize, our administrators and our faculty into a very short-term planning kind of exercise that will be announced more fully tomorrow, that is calling for ideas both about how we can move in new directions and find new things to do, and at the same time conserve costs, knowing that we will be in a dynamic and uncertain budget situation for a time. But Claire, perhaps you'd like to add to that.
I think you've stated it well, President. For FY20, the current fiscal year that we're in, we're trying to reduce expenses as much as we can to complete the fiscal year. There will be directives being sent out later on this week as far as expenditures are concerned for FY20. We've incurred significant, and this is wonderful for our students, we've incurred significant cost in refunding room and board. There are additional costs associated with COVID that will need to be covered in this fiscal year and will manage. We always do. Looking ahead to fiscal year 21, which starts in July, we had developed a budget, but we will have to go back and tweak that budget as we look at enrollment patterns changes, as we look at additional costs and reducing costs. So stay tuned for that. There is a process in place.
Thank you, Claire. That's helpful. There are a couple more faculty questions that I'll recap here and see if others have comments on them. One is about, this is a great question, does the university have any options for supporting faculty who find themselves now full-time parenting and homeschooling to improve productivity? It's a great question, and it's a good reminder that we need to be mindful of everyone's situation as best we can, because they are all important and unique, and people face their own challenges, and we need to be able to be supportive and helpful. So I think for that particular question, again, the same thing we've been saying to faculty about expecting faculty to be caring and to be flexible and to offer options. I think I would say that our deans and associate deans and chairs and directors are sustaining that same kind of an attitude for their colleagues, their faculty colleagues, as they try to engage in their research and their instruction. I don't really have a great answer to that question, but I would be interested in ideas, and I think that's the kind of question we should be talking about in our 8 o'clock calls and among the deans, recognizing that our faculty too face a number of challenges, and we have to provide some flexibility on that. There's also a question here about whether it's okay to come into your office to pick up some needed materials. My interpretation of that is, again, we're following the stay-at-home rules, we're following the social distancing rules, but if you're teaching and doing essential work here, then it is important for you to have your materials. And so, Robert, I hope this is correct, but it's fine for a quick trip into the office to pick up what you need and to continue with your essential work. That
is, and I notice that person notes that they have a key. If you do not, there's easy access to facilities management custodians or the police who can get you into your office spaces to retrieve critically needed materials or documents.
Okay, at this point, there are several questions about employment that are very, very specific. Employee use of sick leave and vacation time, and whether there is a way to have a donation process for that. I'm just listing what these questions are because I want Chris to have them and to be able to discuss them with his teams before we're able to give full answers, but I want to acknowledge that these are great questions. Being sure that, wait a minute, let's see, very specific questions about employees who may not have any additional remote work during the upcoming weeks, and how does the COVID pay policy apply to those? That's a technical question, and we need to be sure that HR takes a look at that. no employee would be laid off or would be required to take involuntary furlough. That is part of the chancellor's message. And so we want to reiterate that, that the operationalization of that, of course, occurs between employees and supervisors, but any kinds of issues that might come up on that should be taken to HR as questions, because you can keep going back to the chancellor's statements and to the HR guidance on that matter. Questions about whether positions are at risk. Again, you've heard the chancellor's guidance. That's what we have at this point. Are programs at risk of being permanently shut down because of the budget crisis? You know, as a university, and people know this, it's an annual process, right? That we look at our programs, we look at what we need that should be new, that we would add. We examine programs carefully across various variables as a part of our regular program analysis and evaluation. And so I think our regular processes continue. And we always look for the best ways to serve our students, to serve the state of Maine, to be the leaders that we are. And so that plays out in the standard processes through departments and colleges and across the university. I do think that we should be thinking hard about what's next in higher ed. How does the University of Maine show leadership in a rural state in terms of what kinds of offerings and options we need to have in place for our students, for our prospective students, for those who might be seeking other ways to continue their education? We want UMaine to be a place that makes that possible. So, so that will be an ongoing conversation. Dave, you've maybe had a chance to read questions while I was talking. Anything you're seeing here that we should talk about?
Yeah, there's a question. What is happening to the classes that have been set up for the fall of 2020 and the spring of 2021, especially in terms of the retention of adjunct faculty?
We are in the process of looking at FY21 and working to be back. I mean, hoping that everyone is on campus. As I've heard the president say, will be open this fall, whatever that means, and whatever way we can be open this fall to welcome our students back and to welcome the first year class of 2020 and our seniors. And we hope that it's in person, but whether it's in person or remote or online, we are looking to field our fall schedule. And part of that will depend on the number of students we have to engage with us.
Which we hope is a lot. A couple of things. So this is really an amazing experience of multimedia, person by person, because I'm getting texts and the questions that are coming in over the over our feed. But in any case, just a verification from Robert Placido in the system that faculty indeed have access to their offices. Those are, you should feel completely comfortable having access there. There's a question, kind of technical, about no-cost extensions for the internal grants that people have been unable to spend down under these circumstances, like Research Reinvestment Fund or IURC. I'll take that to Cody. I'm assuming the answer is yes, but.
Well, most probably the answer is yes, and they should go to the regular process of formally requesting that, and we'll then respond to them. But most probably the answers would be yes.
That's great. I just want to reiterate how closely our Office of the Vice President for Research and Graduate Studies is working with the federal government. And so they are completely up to date on federal guidance relative to all of these matters related to research. Also, although he's not on this call, our Vice President for Innovation and Economic Development, Jake Ward, is extremely busy through this period, working across the state with manufacturing organizations, with our own researchers and engineers, with the healthcare system, with MEMA. The system, the University of Maine system has an agreement with MEMA, the Maine Emergency Management Association, I guess it is, to authority, I think that's the word, with MEMA to be in a position to help and support and take action within the state under the MEMA umbrella. And there's an enormous amount of activity and of preparation, everything, as I've mentioned, from preparing materials that can be used to creating new prototypes and kind of everything in between. while there's a bit of a pause, I also want to point to the outstanding work being done by University of Maine Extension. It's worth taking a look at their website. They are full of ideas. They are offering ideas every day about how to engage with your communities through this crisis, how to support K through 12 learners. There are ideas for activities there. One of their most significant contributions has been the creation of essentially a web tool that allows farmers across the state of Maine and food producers of various types to let others in the state who may be seeking those kinds of supplies know what they have and know how to get them and how to access them, kind of a matchmaking opportunity. It's just tremendous as a resource meant to be supportive and helpful to our state. So it's important to remember UMaine is statewide, and we are doing our best to exercise leadership in the communities in which we are based across the state. Again, I'm going to turn to Dan Qualls to say a bit more about how things are at the University of Maine at Machias and any particular issues at Machias, Dan, that you'd like to be sure we bring up in this call.
Our biggest issue is probably an issue that the University of Maine shares, and that's with students having access to connectivity. And we met with some students yesterday, and connectivity wasn't the issue, but being away from the res hall, living back at home with family and younger siblings, that students are reporting they're having a hard time finding a quiet place to study, to spread out, and they don't have access to libraries or other places that we had in the past. So that's two that are related to being off campus. We are getting ready. Our Dean of Students is getting ready to contact every single student by phone, and we're talking around 600 students. So it'll be all of us calling in and checking on students individually. So that's coming up in the next week or so.
Thank you, Dan. That's terrific. I'm going to turn to Faye actually to talk about the efforts that we're making to identify students who haven't been checking in on their courses and how we're working to reach out to them, Faye.
The system was able to provide us with information on those students who hadn't logged into Blackboard since the crisis began and we went remote and online. And so every college has associate deans and staff members trying to contact those students to find out if there are issues that we can help resolve or ways to get them reconnected with classes to finish the term. We have those calls have been wonderful in terms of hearing from students that they're appreciative of being contacted by the University of Maine to show that we care, and I assure you that we do. That the faculty and staff really wants to see all of our students complete this term if they can. That's where the pass-fail option came about, and the extension of the withdrawal option to May 1st. So both of those options are through May 1st, and we want our students to feel comfortable to connect with their faculty, to ask their advisors, and to check with their associate deans or student affairs if they have questions about any of those issues. But the attempt to call and talk and contact to make sure that our students are okay is important to the faculty and staff that are engaged in those efforts.
Thank you, Faye. Other people who've not, who are on the panel here, who have particular points that they'd like to make. I see a couple of new questions. Something to Cody, something to Dave. Maybe Dave and then Cody, if you would like to take up these matters that have just come up.
Yeah, we have additional information on the extension of the tenure clock from Lisa. And I'll read the language in the revised AFM agreement. It says, AFM and University of Maine system agree that faculty may initiate an extension to their probationary period for a year. And initiation occurs by notifying the appropriate administrator. When I spoke of it earlier, I made it sound like you may request permission or approval of an extension, but you can initiate and we'll get the extension. However, you don't have to use it if, when you do apply for tenure, turns out you had a very productive spring and you want to use it in your record, you may. So I think it's very generous. I do want to point out one little tidbit to Faye's previous comment about extending the period for withdrawal. What that does is it allows the students to withdraw passing. The deadline for withdrawal is about to go by this week, and after this, if you withdraw from a class, you can only withdraw if you have a passing grade. But we're going to allow students, it sounds like now, that even if they have a failing grade, they may withdraw without academic penalty on their record through May 1st. Is that right, Faye?
Withdraw from a course. And yes, the working with the faculty senate, the deadline to withdraw from a course passing with a passing grade is until May 1st, last day of classes. Deadline to choose an option is pass-fail. The pass-fail option also means that if students were to fail the class, it's still not going to be in their GPA. So that careful consideration of whether or not for the grade or a pass-fail option in this term is important. But yes, withdrawing from a class, that deadline has been extended until May 1st as well.
And so on that front and so many, we do encourage our students to speak directly with their faculty members, with their associate deans in their colleges, with their advisors, with student life to get guidance on those choices, because there are various considerations that I know people have to take into their thinking as they go. Cody, this is a question about graduate student stipends. Have you seen it?
Not in front of me. Would you
Okay,
mind?
so basically it's about sort of the future risk of graduate student stipends as we look at the budget future. Again, I think I'll try a general answer to that question, which is we are looking to support our students, of course, our staff as strongly as we can going forward. And so we'll keep everyone posted if decisions are made to the contrary in terms of what we're already doing right now. So Cody, you may wish to add more.
Yes, and building on that, we are also know that, for example, there are concerns about delays. Let's say if these graduate students are working on some kind of a research project, the project is kind of on pause or delayed, and it will take them longer time to graduate, and maybe their faculty sponsors don't have enough funding to help them out on all of that. So again, we are looking at all of those possibilities to see, on one hand, if there are ways that we can help them out, but on the other hand, also we are closely monitoring what's going on at the federal level and in Congress, especially if there is going to be a new round of support from the federal government. I think I have seen some recommendations being made by some national bodies to Congress to kind of have some funding available to address such issues for graduate students and other aspects of research and other unforeseen expenses that now we have, and maybe we get some help from the federal government as well.
Great, thank you. So we're coming close to the end of our hour, and in a minute we'll do a sort of lightning round of last comments, last words from all on the panel. But I would like to thank everyone. For those whose questions, if they've not been answered adequately, of course, please do resend, and we will make sure to either get back to you directly or get these up on the FAQ. This session will be taped, I believe, and so it'll be possible for you to find this in the archives. But let's just go around the table here, and I'll go by the way in which I can see you all here. Dan, any more to add?
No, I just urge faculty and staff and students just to keep communicating, and we're ready to help.
Cody.
Same thing. Please communicate. We are open for business, and any way we can help, we are here to do so.
Robert.
Well, I thank you all for joining us. I would just say, let's keep doing what makes the University of Maine so magnificent, and that is being a true community. So support each other, ask for help, reach out. We're going to get through this.
Chris.
So I'll put in my plug for Chris Richards and the enrollment management team, who've done a phenomenal job in these unique circumstances, and say that we've got about 2,500 or more brand ambassadors for the University of Maine who can help us with enrollment management through communications in their communities, with their family and friends, that can help us ultimately financially by having a strong enrollment in this fall.
Thanks. Kimberly.
Yes, I'd just like to stress that we are looking forward to receiving your suggestions and your ideas about commencement. So please visit that site and send your suggestions. Stay at home healthy and be well.
Claire.
I just miss everyone. I'm anxious to get back to the university and to do the hard work that needs to be done because we have an outstanding team across the campus and we'll get through this together. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, this has been tough on the faculty to have to teach online. I understand that, but let's not forget that the students that they're teaching to, some 10,000 of them out there, are in 10,000 different classrooms of uneven quality and learning environment. So let's stay compassionate and think of the students as we trudge through the remainder of the semester.
Thanks, Fred. You're on mute.
So I ask everyone to think about three things. Think about student success. Think about asking those students how they're doing. It's not too late to check in. Think about the families of our employees. There's the other side of the Zoom screen that you're not aware of. There's tremendous stress, laid off family members, folks who are sick as well. I also ask you to think about UMaine's contributions to solving this challenge for the state of Maine. I have a unique window into that with the health units in our college, and have really come to understand the extent of the challenge that isn't shown in the numbers you're reading about in the papers every day. And UMaine is one of the largest employers in the state of Maine, can make a significant contribution by following the governor's directive to stay at home. It's a very important factor in almost every discussion that we have about operations.
I hope that you are as grateful as I am to be part of this phenomenal community. It's a great place to be with people doing wonderful things. Just amazing. Really appreciate every one of you.
Thank you all. Be safe, be healthy, stay in touch with us. We miss you, and we'll talk again soon. Bye.